All right, we are live, and I'm Mike Lyons, CEO of Lyons and Associates. I'm going to start off today with some sales myths. About a week ago, we talked about the evolution of sales, and let's face it, selling has changed. The formula that has been used for selling for years and years and years is now less effective because it has become predictable to our B2B customers, businesses, as well as standard individual consumers. The fact is, our new age breed rolls their eyes as a salesperson begins their close. And in our world today, a lot of our prospects just don't resist, but they can also resent some of the facts in this, or your order taking position that may have been advertised as a sales position 20 years ago. This has been replaced by the internet. Okay? The hard close has been replaced by the strong opening. We always want to make sure we have a fantastic elevator pitch to open up with. The willingness to buy lunch has been replaced by the actual ability to solve clients' problems. And what many companies report is their sales force ability to meet quota is declining and is typically less than 50%. And it is a fact that in any given company, 80% of the total revenue typically comes from 20% of the sales force. Some companies even say it's a 90 to 10% split. So today, we should embrace a consultative type of selling, which is the type of selling that we talked about a week ago that happened in the 70s, which promotes a better understanding of the dynamics of how at this point in time, it's the next generation of selling. And as we all know, fads come back, styles come back. The bell-bottom pants that were popular in the 60s were popular again a decade ago, or maybe a little more. But the point is, fads come back. And sometimes fads come back just as a person finding their old Swatch watch from the 80s, putting a battery in it, and saying, man, this thing matches one of my shirts. I'm going to wear it again. and these are the types of things we want to look back on and bring into our current style selling. And think about this. When was the last time you bought something because the salesperson sold you? How many times have you bought from a telemarketer that has called your house? And did you even answer the phone when you saw the number on the caller ID and said, oh man, this is a salesman? How many presentations have you seen or listened to a salesperson with way too many PowerPoint slides and way too many words? Did they say their service or product is the solution you need when they clearly did not have a clue about the problem? Worse yet, were they boring? Did they convince you? Did they sell you? Did you buy? How many contracts have you signed because the salesperson bought you lunch or dinner? Or did another supplier have a better answer at a lower price? The fact is, everyone sells, and this is something that more and more CEOs that run corporations are beginning to realize. If you look at CEOs of very successful companies, they are constantly selling. The guys who aren't are stagnating. These are the people that realize that the person who answers the phone is just as important as the sales staff when it comes to selling the customer. In fact, in many organizations, many employees within the organizations find themselves pressed into meeting with prospective buyers or existing customers. When we walk into Walmart, for example, Walmart has the door greeter to say hi and make you feel welcome as soon as you walk into the door. And the truth is, in business buyers, they buy because they realize they have a problem that needs to be solved. They know what is required to solve it. They do their own research because, as we know, the internet is a tremendous source of information, and they typically select a service or a product that will give them the results they expect. The bottom line in this is buyers are already sold by themselves. They are already sold, and with a solution for their problem. There's a myth that many people in sales subscribe to. Selling is an art. Selling is a talent. Wrong. Not an art, not a talent. It's a process you develop. It's a process that we develop from dealing with people on a day-to-day basis and giving them a solution for a problem, giving them some medicine for the pain. A lot of what I've heard from some people on the sales as a talent. If the people who believe this way, if you ask them to follow a procedure or write a report or update the sales system, a lot of them will tell you, I don't have time. Sales is a process. Sales is a procedure. It's something that is really necessary in selling. and I mean having a process, having a specific procedure. You know, one of the things that I see all the time is falling behind in follow-ups. Is it really necessary to update the CRM, or do you get a free pass? Well, yeah, it's necessary. This stuff is there as a tool for our sales process. You know, I remember the days when I had to use index cards in a tickler file. And, you know, you call somebody and you just drop that one into the back, or you put it in the respective date for a follow-up. This is the same thing. And sometimes we have follow-ups that we may skip just because what if the accounting said, well, is it really necessary to pay the bills today? That would not be good. And if you believe any aspect of business is simply an art, ask the CFO at Enron how that works. If you guys remember them, I don't. Well, that CFO may not be out of prison yet, but the purpose of a procedure, it's not about having to reinvent the wheel or anything, but it's important because procedures produce predictable and repeatable results. In sales, it's a series of processes and procedures comprised of generating a lead, qualifying a lead, interviewing the client, proposing our services, developing a price, signing a contract, and delivering the product or service, then managing the account. And that's as difficult as it needs to be. One of the things that we want to look at within our own sales process is, are your procedures current? Do your procedures produce the results you expect? Are all procedures documented? Is the staff trained in their use? Do you have any metrics that you utilize? Do you monitor the implementation of your procedures? All of these things are important parts of our sales model. And as far as sales models go, although we do have recognized standards in sales, we have no recognized standards in sales, but we have plenty of sales models to choose from, if that makes sense. Many sales forces use all of them, some of them, or some hybrid of them. The reason we have specifics in place to guide how we do things is because the fact is, if we allow everybody to follow their own model, it creates a considerable disparity of which model is working the best. The fact is, the methods we have been developed over several decades, and they have been amended to go with the current times and what the sales environment is like currently. So what we want to look at is which sales models are you using? Is it working? And if it's not working, are you trying something else? And this is something that goes back to, let's say, an advertising agency is going to run an ad campaign for Nike. Okay? They're going to run what's called an A/B split test to see which advertisement gets the most results, which one generates the most leads, which one generates the most interest. And this is something we want to do as we're selling. And when I say don't follow your own model, I still want you to follow your own model, which may seem a little confusing at first, but we all need to find what fits us, and we need to make it work with what sales model we already have in place that's already proven. Because the fact is, some things work for some salespeople which do not work for others. And typically, our type of selling is really, it's more of a script-based model that is basically divided into 4 steps. Your approach, which is how you get in the door. Your demonstration, which is your elevator pitch to the decision maker, interest. Then it comes to a proposition. What can we actually do to provide a solution for your problem? And then we come to the close. So it's, a 4-step approach. Approach, demonstration, proposition, and close. So again, in our approach, the salesperson makes no mention of the product. It's the foot in the door. Instead, we get in and explain that we want to help the business person find ways to increase profit. Okay, and at that point, we're getting the wants and needs into effect so we can act as a consultant. Now, when we get into a demonstration, this is as simple as we make it. In this, all we want to do is carefully lead a prospect up to the point of closing the sale. We want to take their hand and walk them into the close. Now, once we get to our proposition, this is where we really describe the product for the first time and explain how it will really help this prospective client solve their business problems. Okay, and once this proposition is clear, and as salespersons, we feel sure that the prospect realizes the value of our service and the moment seems right, we go in for the close. And the close sometimes can be the toughest part of the sale. And there are a number of techniques for closing. For example, don't ask for an order. Take for granted that the customer will buy, and this is known as an assumed close. You know, this is like saying, Mr. Jones, what color do you want your new car in, and when do you want it delivered? You know, one of the things we can also do when we're making an assumptive close, sometimes if a client's not jumping over the edge, we can fill out the collection agreement for them, even if it's just a single placement agreement or with the debtor information, the rate, the client information, send it over and say, all I need you to do is sign. When we do that, we're making it easy. When they object, we find out why. We engage, we respond to his or her objections, and again, prepare them for a signature. One of the other things we want to do is make our prospect feel that he or she is buying because of his or her own good judgment. Something else we do is find out the real reason they're resisting, and in many cases, this is your ammunition to close the sale. Most of the times, your resistance is the very reason why a prospect should sign on to use our services. One thing we want to do is find out where their resistance is and concentrate our whole force on one good, strong point that appeals to what his or her problem is. And when we appeal to that point, we should also appeal to judgment and get them to acknowledge that what we are saying is, then hand them the pen. And of course, we're doing this by email, but hand them the pen. I'm sure you guys have heard the hand him the pen before. I mean, that goes way back in sales. Hand them the pen, man. You know, give them the pen. We're not going to get too in-depth into this right now. What I want to do is get some feedback and find out some obstacles that we may be facing, so that I can hand you the pen. So, hey, talk to me, man. Talk to me.
Yeah, I had a question related to that, about follow-ups and about qualifying. I was thinking about that this morning, making my calls. Last person I talked to before getting on the Hangout, said, we handle everything. Well, we handle majority of our stuff in-house. We used a collection agency, but it's been 2 or 3 years. Haven't had anything. We've got everything pretty much covered. So, do you consider that a to me, they're not really qualified. And she said, well, you can send me your information. I know we're not in brochure business, and put them on a follow-up. But when you were in the doing the sales, would you? Yeah, I get a lot of those where they say, we haven't said anything this year or the last couple of years. I'm not, they may or may not be telling me the truth. But would you consider that? Would you create that person into a prospect or not? I mean, maybe not a right or wrong answer on that, but
Well, what I would do is compliment them on the fact that they're using their in-house collectors and they're doing very well at it. And I would ask them some qualifying questions to see if they are in fact going to answer them or not. Because most of the time, this is a brush off. Unless they're a smaller company that really does collect everything, which this doesn't happen often. But what we want to do is get in there with some straightforward questions. On average, how many 90-plus accounts do you carry on your aging sheet? And then we want to determine the approximate number of accounts that are on their aging that have not paid according to the terms of the sale. Or you can do that mirror image of what I just said. What's the approximate amount of accounts that are on your aging that have not paid according to the terms of the sale? And that can actually lead you into, on average, how many 90-plus accounts do you carry on your aging sheet? It's kind of it's a hard question, but it's a soft lead-in to your hard question. And you can also ask them, how many open accounts do you have? And this will determine, if there's an actual need for our services. And we also want to try to get some type of feel for how effective their collection methods are and what methods they're using. What we're doing here is trying to get the credit manager to say what percentage of delinquent accounts their company can live with and if they are within these limits. Okay? Because even if they're at an amount they can live with, that means there's still something there. And if they're within these limits, it's going to be a harder sell. But if they're not within those limits, this is your opportunity to pounce like a lion. And these are the things that are going to determine whether you want to delete the lead or turn them into a prospect. How much conversation are they going to actually have about it? And this will let you know fairly quickly whether they're just blowing you off or if they're actually being honest. And of course, if there's nothing there, delete it, chalk it up as a no need, and move on. But a lot of companies that do this in house, they do phone calls and letters. If they send somebody out to visit, it's their salesperson who wants to maintain the relationship, whereas our only concern is getting their money. Of course, that's unless they want us to help them maintain the relationship. We can do that too, but a standard hard approach collection is not designed to maintain relationships. It's designed to get the money. Does that answer your questions? Did I leave anything out?
yeah, no, definitely. And those are some questions I've heard before and I've used. Like again, going back to that example. I mean, that lady said that her receivables ran 30 days and everybody was within that. Currently, again, hadn't had anything in 2 years. She said, well, you could send me your brochure. It might have been a brush off, but so do. Thinking, well, should I just delete this person? There's no need there, really, but or not. You take the time to send her the email or not. When
I would.
you'd probably delete them, someone like that.
I'd delete them. Sending them information makes you want to follow up. It gives you a natural urge to follow up with them again and waste your time again. And the reason I don't send them anything in that particular case is I don't want to set myself up to call them back again and say, hey, man, I sent you that brochure out. Did you read it? Because that is always a waste of time. Did you get my information? What you're going to get there is either a no, send it again, or yes, we have your information on file. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. Those are the two answers you get to that question.
Right. But, the trick is, I've heard Rick say it before, or people talked about it on here, where maybe someone did give you a response where they really weren't qualified, but then Rick said he called them back in 3 months, and they said, oh yeah, I do have something that's 6 months old. So they actually did have something, and they were lying, or it's hard to again decide when to delete them, and or when to maybe this is somebody I should follow up with, and again there's no right or wrong answer on that, I think, but I just kind of was thinking through that on some of these this morning. Not wanting to do like what you're saying, following something that's never going to happen.
Right. Yes. On each one of them, it's up to you to determine whether they're yanking your chain or if they're real. In a lot of cases, a potential client will lead us into wasting our time without even meaning to. So we want to be careful of how we spend our time, because there's not enough hours in the day as it is. Kim, talk to me.
Hi, I'm back. So actually, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about leaving messages or not leaving messages, when you think it's effective and when it's really just not a good idea, in your opinion.
I only leave messages if I already have spoke with someone. Now, this works differently for different people, but if I'm selling and just cold calling, I'm looking for somebody to talk to. Now, sometimes when you're cold calling, you can leave messages and people will call you back. But what I would recommend doing for that is make 100 cold calls and leave messages, then make 100 and do not leave messages. Time, how long it took you to make the calls and leave messages, and how long it took you to do the ones without leaving messages, and see which one generated the most prospects per amount of time used. Now, your 100 calls without leaving messages is going to be shorter, so you're going to have to get your pencil out and do some math on that one. But it will tell you systematically which one is going to produce better results for you. For me, I just don't do it. I'll leave a message for somebody that there's already been a report built with, but messages don't work for me unless I'm collecting. If I'm collecting, messages work real well.
That's great.
If I'm making sales, people are more prone to talk to me personally if I have them on the phone than actually pick up the phone and call me back unless I've begun to build a rapport with them. And I think that has to do with my personality. I have a very strong personality. And believe it or not, some people think I'm arrogant.
Thank you. Thank you for your insight on the topic.
And unfortunately, there's no simple answer to that. The only thing to do is run a split test, an A/B split test, just like in advertising. See which one works and which one doesn't. And if you get better results not leaving messages, don't leave messages. If you get better results leaving messages, leave a message every time.
I have another question for you.
Okay.
So over to construction, could you talk a little bit about how liens work? And you know, sometimes I've called and people have said, "Oh no, I don't need collections. I just file liens." And I want to know, is there a point at which we can't help them anymore, or can we help them at any point after they've filed a lien? Plus, just a little bit about how they work.
Well, we can help somebody out after they've filed a lien. In most instances, a mechanic's lien is filed. Usually it has to be filed within a specific number of days, depending on what state you're in. Some of them are 30, some 60. It depends on what their state laws are. And all the lien does is allow them a security interest in the property in the event that the title to the property is transferred. For example, and I'm going to use real estate in this because you have quite a deal of experience in that. If someone is purchasing a house, the deed or the title has to be clear on it for that sale to happen. Now, if the person selling the property has any other liens, a second mortgage, maybe they were sued and had a judgment, maybe they have an outstanding construction lien, all of that has to be satisfied through escrow before the title can get transferred. Now, in some cases, and I've seen this happen, because we do have a client that liens everything, and they lien everything and they place the account at 60 days, even though it's been liened. And some people do believe that liens collect debts, which they don't. This client knows that. They know that a lien's going to sit there and sit there. I've actually seen accounts that didn't get collected with property on them get sold out from under the lien. I guess they had a friend in the recorder's office or something that did something very similar to fixing a speeding ticket. I don't know if that stuff happens a lot up in Oregon, but I live in the New Orleans area where it's I'm not going to say that the officials are corrupted down here, but things like that happen.
Yes, it can here too. I have heard of that.
Yeah, needless to say, if I need a ticket fixed, I know who to call. And that's what can happen with liens. But the fact is, if they have a lien on a property that the property owner has no intention of selling, what are they going to do to enforce it? There's nothing that they can actually do unless their lien is worth a substantial amount of money and they can force a property sale. Then they're just going to have to sit on it and sit on it and sit on it and wait for the owner of the property to decide they want to sell it or refinance or something like that.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to have a better, bigger picture of. And so now it gets me to thinking about judgments. How when when we run into people who have judgments, you've said, judgments don't collect. So how do we determine if a judgment is something worth pursuing as paper for our collectors versus not? Yeah, are there any guidelines we should watch for, or should we always call in about them and ask?
Judgments I typically like to stay away from unless they're in specific industries. Judgments on construction stuff in the western states, that's fantastic paper. As long as the contracting company that the judgment is against is a currently licensed contractor. Because there are pressures we can put on that contractor to force them to pay. Now, one of the problems that we see pretty often in judgments is the prospect or client does not always sue the correct person. When you sue a company, you have to have their legal name correct. If you go in there and sue the wrong company, or the wrong company name, or if you have it somewhat incorrect, it's got to be the exact legal name. If it's not, then it's unenforceable. I had one pretty similar to this recently, that the client sued the wrong company. And then he sat on the thing for a couple of years, so the statute of limitations ran out. And now he can't sue the right company, and he wants to know, well, why? Well, because you didn't dot your I's and cross your T's. So on judgments, we have to be really careful about what we spend our time on, because some of them are a big, fat waste of time. Some of them are money, some of them are a waste of time. It just depends. Typically, if you've got somebody with a judgment, tell them you'll take it, we'll take a look at it, and get some new accounts placed with it. That's the best thing to do, because you know the old saying about the hero and the goat.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Anything else, Kim?
I actually was just looking through my notes here. I had another question. I'm trying to find where it went. Let's see. Oh, in closing, when you've actually quoted rates to someone, And then I've noticed there are kind of three common responses after you quote rates. Actually four. One is the person might actually be interested and want to place something, which is always great. The second being that I've experienced is that the prospect starts bartering. And I viewed that as a really good sign because most people only barter if they actually want to deal with you. So I see that as a plus. Then I've had people who after quoting the rate, say they will think about it. And in that sense, some have said either say they'll think about it, or occasionally they've been quiet or unresponsive temporarily. And I've kind of stumbled upon a couple things, but I wanted to hear your experiences. I've found a couple times that it actually meant that the person was not the decision maker, even though they were purporting to be. So that was one experience that I had. And then other times I've just found that either they're distracted or processing the information, or that I hadn't yet given them what they needed to hear to be able to make a decision. So then I've developed questions for using after that. But in your experience, what do you think is a good approach for when someone, after you quote rates and you've properly qualified them first, to clarify that part, if the person kind of says, oh, okay, I'll think about it, how would you approach it at that point?
Well, I would ask them, what is it that they need to think about? Or is there another decision maker on your team that you have to discuss it with? The I'll think about it is always a brush off.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. And when someone has to think about it, what they're really saying is, the rate you've quoted me is too high. I don't even want to negotiate, and I don't want to talk to you anymore. That's what I'll think about it means to me. And normally, I'll ask that person, well, what do you need to think about? And another thing you can do is, if you know that person is the decision maker, like if they're the company owner that's got to think about it, get their commitment for a decision within a specific time frame, call them back and hold them to their commitment, and if they don't keep it, I don't call them back. That's how I do it. Because sometimes you will run into one that has to think about it and they're not sure, and then you call them back and they say, oh, well, I still haven't thought about it. Okay, you're not ready to do business, and you're never going to be ready to do business, so I need to spend my time talking to somebody who is ready to do business. And that's how I view that one. The last one you had mentioned is the quiet type. Quiet types, never interrupt them when they're thinking. Always, no matter how long it takes, when you give them something to think about and they get quiet on you, I shut up until I hear something from them. I'll sit there and wait 2 or 3 minutes for an answer, and I won't say a word. I'll sit there silent and wait for them to answer me. I don't interrupt and say, are you still there, or you still with me, you still thinking? I don't say any of that. I sit and wait for them to make their mind up. And that's something people have been doing in sales for years, and that goes back to the first person to speak loses, if you've ever heard that one. But the quiet types are the hardest to really close because they're really reluctant to give you a reason, because most of these quiet types feel that if they give you an objection, that they're convinced that you're going to have something to come right back to overcome their objection, and they don't want you to overcome it. So quiet types, I just get quiet right back with them. Ask them a question, wait for them to answer, even if it takes all day.
That's great, Mike. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes these quiet types are actually waiting for you to interrupt their thought, because they may be believers in the first person to speak loses also. Sometimes they might be waiting for you to give them that extra bit of confidence they need to win the sales match, you know. So what else do you have written down in the questions, Kim?
Let's see. That was actually really helpful because I have little notes here where I was going through the different responses that I've received and coming up with kind of ways to come back to people. And so going back a little bit, the people who think they will think about it. So you said that in your experience, those are people who are often also, they don't want to barter, basically. They don't like the rate, but they don't want to barter. So is that a good person to come back with, well, what rate do you think is fair at some point if you can't get them to make a commitment?
I would say before going into that, get them to confirm what the actual problem is with them not making a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
Unless you already know it's right, but I wouldn't open the door of negotiation until they ask for it.
Got it. Thank you. I think that was all I had today.
Okay, good deal. Prospects can be tricky. They will definitely keep you on your toes.
Definitely, and I mean, you're, a closing master since this is just right on the money as far as, your skills and where your focus has been. So I think that closing is an easy place for people, including myself, to kind of drop the ball, where you get that far and then you just don't know how to make it happen at that point sometimes. So I really appreciate your detail in this matter.
Absolutely. And remember one thing in this: buyers are sellers also. Okay, for a buyer to engage in a deal with you, they have some sales to do on their part too. Okay, and if your buyer is not selling you on something, something's wrong. They may not be convinced. And I know that sounds completely ass backwards, but think about it. Think about it next time you're talking to prospects. The ones that are actually engaging you, they're trying to sell you their idea of how the deal should go. The ones who aren't have no interest in buying. So that'll also help you out when you need to pull a 180 on somebody.
Precisely. Thank you.
All right. Hank, did you have anything else, brother?
Yeah, I had one other question. One of the things I'd forgotten about, I was reading through some of the training material the other night, was where it talks about where, say, 50% of the accounts that we collect, we get the collection fee. And I kind of forgot about using that. When is it appropriate or to use that? And I talked to Rick about that before, and he said that mainly use that in the construction industry when we have the most success in collecting the account plus the fees. Or
Right. And in some industries, we're not going to have as much success in collecting the collection fees. And this is because, like, for example, if we're in a transportation deal and we're going after an end user or a shipper, a consignee or shipper, the fees aren't getting paid. The fees and interest are not going to get paid ever. I've never seen it happen, and it's because you're going after a third party to pay the original bill. However, in stuff like the construction stuff, we get a lot of those paid. Like, for example, if we're looking in California, if you were to read the Building and Professions Code book, it's in there somewhere that if a contractor is delinquent with a supplier and they have to hire a third party to collect their money, that per the contractor's board law, they're liable to pay that. And that's something a lot of people don't know. Clients don't know that. Debtors don't know that. But when you tell them what page to look on in the Building and Professions Code book, they say, "Oh," when you send them a copy of it, of course. It's like, "Look, man, you're liable. It's not my fault you're liable. You did this. Now get your checkbook."
So is that only in California that's it written down?
It varies. It varies from state to state.
So other than the construction industry, have we had success in collecting the fee?
Yes, yes, and it's going to vary from industry to industry. It's also going to vary if the client has that written in their credit application that the debtor signed before he did business with them. That's going to give us a better edge at collecting the fees and interest as well also. You know, and that's across the board in industries unless we're collecting from a third party. And the reason I say it doesn't happen a lot in trucking is because nearly every trucking debt that we get paid is paid by a third party and not the actual broker. So if you go and start pitching that and making promises to your transportation clients about things like that, well, they may be disappointed when we don't collect everything for them because we've had to go to a third party.
So outside of the construction in California or other states, the credit app, and that just reminds me, you need to bring up the credit app. You have a good credit app that has that language in it. If they don't have it, we can help them do that, obviously. And that gives us a good leg up in getting that collected.
Exactly. Exactly. And the credit app's a good freebie to give your clients too. You know, it's a fantastic thing to go in there and be able to give them something that they can use in business that didn't cost them anything, and it's a good way to build trust and build your rapport up.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we're going to shut this down for the day. And Tuesday, not having a hangout. Tuesday, I've got a schedule that I'm not sure how I'm going to meet everything in it, but I'll figure it out. And the hangout is one of the things that I've got to cancel for Tuesday because I'm going to be out and about all day. Because one of the things I'm currently working on is, well, always working on expansion. And one of my projects right now is going to require me to be out pretty much all day Tuesday. So got to make those things move. Unless maybe I can do it on my phone, man. I can stick it to the dashboard of my car, man.
Yeah, Mike, I just thought of another question. I was looking through my notes. I think I know the answer. I just wanted to clarify. Sometimes people tell me, say all my receivables are government related or municipalities or something to that effect. And they say they never have issues or on those, or can't really collect on those. Is that true?
Government paper is more difficult to collect. That does not mean it's impossible.
Okay.
And we've collected government paper before. And matter of fact, we've collected it all the way up the food chain. And when I mean all the way up, I mean all the way up. So it's more difficult to collect. It's a tougher battle, but we can fight it. We're not afraid.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like they're coming from the point saying they're government receivables, and we never have any issues because it is a government receivable. So it does happen.
Well, yeah, and if they never have any issues, chalk it up as a no-need. Okay, and I wouldn't push the government stuff too hard because really, it's a pain in the ass to collect. It's a real pain, and most of the time, we put in a lot of work, spend a lot of money, and we don't get any return on our investment. Other times we do, so sometimes there's money there, sometimes there's not. It's just a lower yielding type of business. But we're not afraid of it. If they say we won't go after the government, I'm going to sit here and laugh because we will.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any problem pissing people off in high places. That I can promise you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, good deal. I guess that's going to wrap it up for today. And we'll do one of these again on Friday. Again, Tuesday, no hangout. and I'll send an email out to everybody from our G Plus page as well. But no Hangout Tuesday.
Great, thank you. And nice hearing your questions too there, Hank. Really appreciated them.
Same here, Kim. We always learn something from you. That's the whole purpose of this, is to we're all kind of going through similar things and just learn a little bit every time. Good stuff.
All right, over and out. Talk to you later.
All right, guys, take care.
All right. Bye.